Kenilworth by Kitty Felde. 1934, Washington, D.C. Sunrise. The sky is pink-orange, fading to a wonderful blue. We are at the edge of a large pond of water lilies. The pond seems to fill the stage. Reflection from the water seems to quiver across the stage. Many of the flowers are blooming. Birds are starting to wake up, chattering. There's another noise, the grunting sound of a pig, but it's not. Micah, a 10-year-old boy, is dragging a heavy metal bar across the top of a wooden stake. He's dressed for 1930 school, sans shoes. There is a fishing pole on the ground. Micah continues to grunt, stops after a bit, looks down, and grabs a handful of something off the ground.
Gotcha.
He stuffs his treasure into a bucket and gets back to work.
I told you, sons of hellions, no one touches 1 inch of this land until the case is heard by every judge from here to the Supreme Court.
Behind Micah, what we thought was one particularly large lily on the far upstage side of the stage begins to move. It is a sun hat. Under the hat is Helen Shaw Fowler, 60-something years old. She wades through the water, a knife in one hand and a basket of moss and cut lilies in the other. Micah sees the knife and is alarmed. He drops the iron bar on the ground and holds up both hands.
Don't stab me, I didn't do nothing.
Anything. You didn't do anything.
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah. Well, at least you're not Army Corps.
She lowers her knife, refers to the post and metal bar.
So what are you not doing in my pond?
Grunting, ma'am. Worm grunting? Catching worms. For fishing? Down by the river.
You got a name, young man?
Micah Thompson.
You related to the James Thompsons over on Douglas Street?
That's my uncle, ma'am. I come up from Carolina to live with him. At least, right now.
Does your uncle know you're here worm grunting at the crack of dawn?
Uncle James says anybody can come to the lily farm, white or black.
Your Uncle James is right. Shaw's Water Gardens always welcomes visitors, though folks your age generally drop by after school. May I safely assume you are not on your way to class?
No, ma'am. I mean, yes, ma'am. Not going to school. Ever.
Well, I congratulate your honesty. Why not?
Aunt May says you gotta wear shoes to school. Says no backwoods relatives of hers was gonna embarrass the Thompson family in front of the neighbors. She says she's gonna take me downtown to get some shoes. Except I don't wanna wear shoes or go to school.
I see. You see that willow tree over there? Mr. Woodrow Wilson used to sit in the shade. He always wore white shoes, even out in the mud. I guess you can do that when you're president of the United States, wear white shoes. I hear tell Mr. Wilson likes school.
Well, I don't.
Last time he came was right before he died. He didn't say a word, but he smiled when I handed him a water lily. Everyone smiles when you hand him a water lily. Unlikely as to flowers.
I beg your pardon, ma'am, but those flowers smell like swampland.
So say you. The sweet-smelling ones are on the far side over there. Worm grunting, you say?
You rub this here metal over this top of stick, and the vibrations scare all the worms out the ground. They think a mole coming to eat them for breakfast.
Very clever. Does it work?
Every time. How come you thought I was the Army?
Army Corps of Engineers. They want my land.
What for?
Fools think they're fixing the river by destroying everything beautiful in the process.
She gestures and flowers from her basket fall to the ground. They both squat to pick them up. Micah examines a flower.
Don't look much like a flower.
It's a bud. You gotta pick it early in the morning before it opens up.
What you gonna do with them buds?
Those buds.
What you gonna do with them?
Sell them.
How come?
Well, young Micah Thompson, there are many folks in this world who think lilies are quite lovely.
Got a whole lot of flowers to cut. I used to cut tobacco with my family down in Carolina before. Your family help you with cutting your flowers?
Got no family, not anymore.
I got my Aunt James and Uncle May.
You are a lucky boy.
She rinses her boots off in the water of the pond.
I like being out here first thing. I find I can think a whole lot better when I'm out here with my pink opals.
I think a whole lot better when I'm out with a fishing pole in my hand. And it's even better when there's a fish on the other end of the line.
Well, you won't feel so good if you eat one of the fish you catch in this river.
No, fish tastes good.
Not those fish. Between the human waste dump in the Anacostia and the leftovers from the Navy Yard downstream, you'd be lucky not to grow a third ear.
Might like a third ear.
I might like one too, now that I think about it.
Mrs. Fowler?
Don't say a word, maybe he'll go away.
Mrs. Fowler? You out there somewhere?
Shh.
Lieutenant Roger Collins enters. He wears an Army uniform and carries a briefcase. His shoes are getting very muddy.
Oh, Mrs. Fowler.
Damn.
Not good to be swearing, ma'am. You can go to hell.
You need to swear when you meet the devil himself. Lieutenant Collins, you didn't have to come all the way out here. I told Major Somerville my answer is no.
I'm afraid it isn't that simple, Mrs. Fowler.
It's very simple. It's wanton destruction of what's left of this poor old river.
Beg to disagree, ma'am. It's protection against another outbreak of malaria. The river is a hazardous swamp.
It's not a swamp. It's a marsh. And you're blaming the river for the failure of the architects of the District of Columbia, who never bothered to find another place to dump sewage than straight into the Anacostia.
The sewage problem was fixed years ago.
Except when it rains and everything comes rushing straight into the river.
I'm not here to argue, Mrs. Fowler.
No, you're trying to take my farm without a penny of compensation.
It's called eminent domain.
It's called public theft.
Look, Mrs. Fowler, I understand you've got a sentimental attachment to these, what do you call them?
Lily ponds. And it's about dollars and cents, Lieutenant Collins, not sentiment.
It's about the public good.
You got something against thinking flowers, Mr. Lieutenant?
I got nothing against the lilies, young man. I'm just here to do my job.
This is Micah Thompson.
Oh, another one of your lawyers? Look, Mrs. Fowler, this project has been underway for decades. The Army Corps has been dredging from Bladensburg on south, and now we're finally here in Kenilworth. Back in the day, that river was 40 feet deep. Now look at it. It's nothing but mud and mess.
And memories. This was just an old ice pond. Young boys like Micah would race around on their skates every winter. It was Papa who brought a dozen white lilies with him when he came down from Maine, planted them right here in this pond. With one arm, he planted them. Lost his other arm at the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse during the war to preserve the Union. I'm sure you, as an Army officer yourself, can appreciate the sacrifice my father made for this country.
As an officer of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Mrs. Fowler, I can appreciate the orders that I'm given.
He hands her a piece of paper. She looks at it, hands it to Micah.
Micah, I left my glasses up at the house. Would you mind to read this for me?
Yes, ma'am. It says lease at the top.
Go on.
On this 15th day of May, 1934,
It gives you continued possession of the property for the next 10 years. And surely you'll be itching to retire by then, Mrs. Fowler. And then said property will be surrendered to the government.
Without payment.
She takes the paper from Micah.
Good day.
Mrs. Fowler.
You tell Major Somerville he'll hear from my lawyers.
He exits.
Damnable man!
Ooh, you better be careful talking like that to the devil, ma'am.
He just makes me so darned mad.
She crumbles the paper.
He just grunting, ma'am. Making noise.
Yes. But this time there's a real live mole making all that noise. A mole called the U.S. government.
She looks at his bucket.
I'm sorry to report that your worms appear to have escaped, Micah Thompson.
Don't make no never mind. I'll get some more.
He sits down and strokes the metal bar over the wooden stake. It grunts. He stops to collect the worms. He notices that she's watching him.
You want to try?
Me?
It's easy. Here, I'll show you.
She crouches next to him. He puts the metal bar in her hands, shows her how to make the grunt. It works. He steps back, and she does it on her own. She laughs.
Oh, my!
Yes, ma'am. Works every time.
He collects the worms. She makes it grunt again.
I always wondered, do the grunt work on moles too?
What's that?
I mean, I never seen a mole come bother me when I'm grunting for worms. Never. You'd think that old mole would be madder than a wet hen about me stealing his breakfast and all. So I was always wondering if that racket scares the mole clean away.
I wonder.
Blackout.